Zimbabweans living in the diaspora have contributed a lot to our economic development through what we now know as diaspora remittances. Even His Excellency the President has met them on his numerous visits to different countries in order to urge them to be self-reliant and also to promote our heritage as Zimbabwe. And there are Zimbabweans who have also taken some top positions in different countries and international organizations. Hello, this is John Masugu and I welcome you to Economic Forum, a program where we discuss various issues affecting our economy in Zimbabwe. There can be issues to do with tourism, mining, education, and many others. We discuss them here in order to see how they can contribute to our economic development. Today we want to look at Africa's potential in promoting economic development in a very self-reliant way and not from the position of a beggar. And I'm privileged to be hosting Tafadzwa Chimbetete, who is doing exactly that in the media, where Jack, you are dignifying Africa and Zimbabwe in particular, so that we do business on an equal basis. Welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Jack, you went to America on a Mandela Washington Fellowship,
Yes.
but you established friendships and working relationships,
Yes.
to the extent that you were able to communicate with those you had met,
Yes.
and eventually went back to work with them.
Yes.
I think that is a very important lesson on how we develop these friendships into business friendships.
Yes.
Tell us about that journey of yours.
So 2018, I was selected as a Mandela Washington Fellow. The Mandela Washington Fellowship, it's a US State Department program that selects a distinct group of business leaders in Africa to come and do a 6-week business exchange. So it's leadership development, you're meeting people in the city, you're networking, and you're learning how the landscape in America is. So when I was there, I was taken to a city called Des Moines. In fact, I didn't know how to pronounce it because it is spelled Des Moines.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to Des Moines and I discovered
That's in Iowa State.
Yes, it's in Iowa, the state of Iowa. So I discovered that they had a very excellent way of doing things. Their ecosystem was very functional. They had a way of accelerating businesses, getting people to start up, getting people to grow, all these type of innovations. And I said this was a good story to tell. So a lady called Mary Buntrick was taking us on a tour of the city, and I said, why can we not produce a documentary about the city? So the organization that was hosting us, the Greater Des Moines Partnership, they were fascinated and they funded the first documentary I produced, which was the story of Des Moines. So that was what connected me to the city. But the most important thing, Mr. Masuku, was the relationships. Now, in business, we take for granted relationships when we meet people, when we talk like the way we're communicating today. But it's because we maintained a very good relationship. They invited me back the year later, and that film was started to be screened in various international film festivals. And there were many other stakeholders in the city who said, hey Jack, the way you communicate ideas is engaging. It's not just showing us about an idea or a story, but it's allowing us to be involved. We want you to continue doing these stories. So when they asked me to do 1 or 2 or 3 more documentaries, another guy who's late now, his name is Mr. John Papa John, he was the first person to invest in Africa Live Network. He saw the shell of what we were trying to do, and he realized we were trying to tell a great narrative about Africa, something that hasn't been told, something that people in the West don't understand. And he said, this will need to grow. So from that day, I decided to set up the business in Iowa and have an international headquarters in Des Moines.
So tell us about the opportunities that you then discovered, further to what you've been doing in Iowa, in order to actually raise the flag of Africa and Zimbabwe in particular out there.
The first opportunities were those that I had experienced and lived myself. Having had run business here in Zimbabwe for more than 15 years, running a production company, producing television programs, documentary series.
Like which ones?
I produced a documentary series called New Generation, where I was focusing on young entrepreneurs and connecting them with successful mentors in the city. I produced entertainment programs. One is Club E International. My first TV production was Jack's Shack TV show. I produced Extreme Entertainment. I produced a number of films and other documentaries that went into different other spaces.
So, Jack, you were made in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And you were able to make an impact abroad. Tell us about the importance of that.
The importance is foundational. So wherever you are, what you want to do is bring a strong foundation. Even today, when I go to the broadcasting center or any other partners who are in the field in Zimbabwe, they will know that I was here creating my own footprint. It is a lot of work to know what you need to learn, to know the precepts of the industry that you're in, and to say, look, I want to be an expert in this area, so it's going to take me to sacrifice a lot of my hours. So most of the time, I was creating a strong foundation in Zimbabwe. What that helped me to do is when I started to travel, everywhere I was going, because I had already worked so hard at creating a footprint, it was easier for me to replicate that. So when I got to the US, I'd already had 15 years of training and development in business. It was very easy to do just the same thing, do it professionally. Now, one thing that I realize is important is a lot of people will try to cut corners when they're doing business or try and make shortcuts. When you go into the international world, that will not work. So one thing that has always been my principle is trying to do everything right. And that has helped me so much now as I've set up this big platform, Africa Live Network.
Yes. You also have taken this concept of actually making people aware that Africa has its skills. Just like you were educated and trained here and were able to attract those overseas. You went to Rwanda, you went to Jamaica and other places just to promote the fact that we are able to join you wherever you are in the West in business because we've got the skills and we've got the raw materials. Briefly tell us about how you achieved anything at all if you did at those conferences.
So the perspective of Africa or African diaspora, which is basically people of color, we're talking about black people or people who are originally from the continent of Africa, is that we're always going out there, with not the right amount of information, with not the right amount of education, like you mentioned, or we don't have skills, we don't have talent, we don't invent or innovate. What we were trying to prove is that Africans have been innovators for centuries. Africans have been inventors for centuries. The only challenge is that the story has not been told. So what we've come up with as Africa Live Network is come up with a program where we are now going all across the continent and starting to tell those stories. But beyond even that, we're even telling stories of African diaspora doing great things even in the West.
You're telling stories of the African diaspora doing great things in different parts of the world. That's Jack Tafadzwa Chimbetete. He's our guest today. He's based in Iowa in the United States of America, and he's talking about how he has used media in order to dignify what we do as Africans and Zimbabweans in particular. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. In the last segment, we talked about why it is important to tell our stories so that we are fully understood. And it is important that we are understood on the African continent as well as in other continents. That's Economic Forum. We're in the second segment with our guest, Tafadzwa Jack Chimbetete, who is based in Iowa in the United States of America and promoting the African image and the philosophy of self-reliance. Let's begin by how we are telling these stories. You are saying, first of all, we are going to Africa because at times we don't know about our potential. That is why we flock to other countries and leave, some of the things that we can actually promote locally. And then you also go to those from other continents in order again to make them fully understand that we are not just beggars, but we can also be partners.
The important thing that I've realized is that as Africans, we also don't understand our potential within ourselves. In fact, we're going too far. As Zimbabweans, there is a lot of potential within ourselves. The first thing is that I think that we have a mentality of isolation and working independently. So the first thing we need to understand is collaboration brings excellent results. So you have your own set of skills, Mr. Masuku, I have mine. If we put our ideas together, whatever you are envisioning and whatever I am envisioning, we can go closer. Everyone else in this room and in the room next door, if we continue to collaborate, we can do a lot more. Now, Zimbabwe has so many resources that if we were to collaborate just on a resource basis, we're able to produce a lot of the answers that we need just in this country alone. So just that philosophy is what we are saying for Africans in general. Sometimes there are raw materials in South Africa that we need in Zimbabwe, but we go to China to get these raw materials. Sometimes there are skill sets that we need that are in Zambia, but we go as far as Japan. So what we want to do is tell the story of Rwanda, tell the story of Ethiopia, tell the story
what you can get there.
Exactly, and what you can get there, so that you realize that maybe you don't have to travel too far. Sometimes people go as far as Dubai to go and get clothes to sell here in Zimbabwe, when they can go as close as Tanzania or even South Africa. Sometimes people go or Chebutu, exactly. So that development of a sustainable economy is what we need as Africans, because the West do that very well. They make sure they promote their own, and they make sure their own is high quality, and they start a distribution channel that brings it all here to Africa. So we want to tell that story very well, because that's one gap that has been there in Africa, where we've been so skilled and talented, but we export our knowledge and we use that same knowledge, bring it back, and it costs us, but we don't get the dollar value. So why not use that knowledge internally and make sure we create value and start accessing the resources of making our country and our continent as beautiful and as valuable as it should be.
So how successful have you been in coming up with media concepts that actually sell that idea very effectively?
So our startup right now is at a beta stage. We've been working at developing the technology. So when we're talking about technology, we're talking about coding what it is that hosts the films. So when you go on africalivenetwork.tv, you're able to see some beta films, some beta stories. And also what we're able to do is when there's a conference in Silicon Valley, when there's a conference in Jamaica, when there's a conference in Australia, we're able to cover that live. The difference with our platform is that when people come and they are watching or they're interacting or they're part of a conference or a symposium, they get to be part of a community. So they get to meet the people even virtually. If I haven't been able to attend an event in person, I'm able to meet and in dialogue and even do business with these people. But beyond even that, the idea itself of promoting our own ideas, the idea itself of promoting our own talent and resources has been adopted very well by a number of very established organizations who are now partnering with us to say, we have stories to tell around the continent. We have stories to tell in different parts of the world. And now we're coming up with different programs with all these partners who are our early adopters. So we're going at a high rate in terms of increasing the production value of what we're going to be doing in the next 6 months. And by the time we move from beta to launching the platform, I think we'll be at a very good place, because we have universities that are partnering with us in the US, even locally. We have universities that are very excited to showcase talent, innovation, startups, business ideas. So we're just really incubating the idea of creating a virtual connecting world where Africans can continue demonstrating the skills to each other and to the world, and people will begin to bring investment, they'll bring trade, they'll bring opportunities of growth, and that will make us more sustainable than ever.
What was the significance of also visiting Jamaica on this program after Rwanda, especially when we talk about diaspora?
So one thing I learned about Jamaica that I didn't know, when I landed and I introduced myself as an African, there is so much love for Africa. So the Jamaicans have a strong tie with Africa. In fact, their dress code, their food, the way they prepare their meals,
their music,
their culture, and their music. There is such a strong connection. And they feel that they are really, really Africans. Now, when you go to other parts of the world, talk about Europe, talk about US, of course you have African Americans and you've got all these other people who are descendants of Africa, but they do not have the connection that the Jamaicans have. So when I got to Jamaica and I introduced the concept of Africa Live, they really loved the concept that even if we're not able to visit immediately, we can virtually go and see what is in Zimbabwe. We can go and see what is Victoria Falls. We can go and see what is Cape Town. And we can be able able to start experiencing it. And that on its own is going to create a virtual reality that allows them, when an opportunity comes that they want to visit, or they want to bring music, or they want to bring tourism, or the other way around, when we want to do business with Jamaica. So it's just creating a connectivity that really allowed me to feel like we're doing something that is going to really revolutionize the world.
Yes. Just to end this segment, tell us about your plans to take this information to non-African countries. I'm classifying here Jamaica, from what you say, as one of us, but Asia, Europe, and so forth. What are you going to tell them?
So I was at an African Diaspora Investment Symposium, and a group of Japanese came, and they were so fascinated by the idea that we are telling different stories of Africa, which they didn't know. So talk about Asia. They also want to know about Africa, because all we do is we consume content about Asia, we consume technology, we consume products. But they also want to know what to get and how to visit and what to do in Africa. So there are multiple opportunities of how we can engage with different other continents. And Africa Live is well prepared to develop a plan in the next 10 years that's going to effectively create a communication and a channel that is going to be effective for this type of dialogue.
That's Tafadzwa Chimbetete. We're talking about Africa's potential in business, so that as we go out there, we are going there as people who are equals and not those who are going to be begging from our partners in the West. And that can only be done if we understand ourselves and our strengths and how we can develop them. So join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where we are discussing with Jake Tafadzwa Chimbetete. As we promote industrialization, in particular in our rural areas, it is important to see how those who have developed in that area have done it. And our guest here, Jake Tafadzwa Chimbetete, has also got a concept where you are looking at rural cities out there in the West, which look like modern cities elsewhere. And you are saying this can also be done where you come from in Nyanga and other places. Tell us about how you are doing that.
So recently, in fact last week, we premiered a documentary called 1500, the story of Manning. It's a small town that has 1,500 people. It's one of the most successful small towns in Iowa because they've been able to industrialize their town. And they've been
from a rural setting.
From a rural setting. And what they've been able to do is bring resources to do manufacturing, to be able to create a food chain from the farm, because Iowa is predominantly a farming area. But they are now being able to create all these type of opportunities for their people within the town. But now the opportunities are so much that their people are not enough, so there's underemployment. So they end up having to look for more people to come and work in this area. So it's a very functional and very effective way of doing things. So by telling these stories, we're thinking of creating models where cities like Chebutu, cities like Gweru, cities like I'll talk about Norton, small towns can be able to develop systems that are very sustainable.
Even growth points.
Exactly, even growth points.
We're talking of devolution nowadays. That's where you come in to promote devolution, so that those areas which were small will end up industrializing and becoming bigger. And there will be no need for everyone to rush to Harare or Bulawayo. Is it something next to that?
It's something exactly like you're describing, because what it does is it creates, again, sustainability within that particular place. So you're able to get energy, you're able to get Wi-Fi, you're able to get clean water, you're even able to get recreational facilities. So with these type of stories, we're using them as models so people can be able to see that it's not just about going to the central business district, but it's also about saying if we create opportunities within these different spaces, we're now able to capitalize on so many opportunities. So this is one of many documentaries that we're going to be showcasing on Africa Live, and we're going to be coming here in Zimbabwe as well, and we want to identify cities that we're profiling. We're already talking to some government agencies to say what stories can we start telling, what opportunities can we start presenting, so we can also know within ourselves how we can start building our own environment.
Are you reaching the right people?
I think we're reaching the right people. We've been
Are you not elitist?
I think we're having the right conversations. And the most important thing, Mr. Masuku, is mindset. So what I think the challenge that we have had a lot as Zimbabweans or as Africans is we're always thinking that we should be getting some resources or capital or something from someone else. What we do not realize that by ourselves we're actually able to create the solution. So what we're trying to do is come up and partner with people in these different areas and say, do you know if we tell this story very well that people are going to inject the finances, that people are going to local people. And by doing that, they will see their benefit. It's only about creating a very good business case. So everywhere we go, we want to create a very good business case by telling a very good story. The Americans have been successful with this. They've been able to tell such wonderful films and movies that everybody wants to be American. So we are now starting to develop a mindset where we need to start, doing films and documentaries and programs like Economic Forum that are proud about Zimbabwe and showcase opportunities where we can develop. And when our young people realize this, they will not want to go anywhere. In fact, they will want to come and call their friends to say there's big opportunities here in my small town.
Talking about young people, Jake, on your recent visit home, you also addressed students, quite a number of students that I saw from your photos at the Harare Institute of Technology. There must have been some interest in what you were telling them. What were you telling them and what did they tell you?
So part of what I was telling them was that, like you said earlier on, my mantra has always been, building it from home. The businesses that I'm running now in different parts of the world, in the USA and in Europe, were businesses that are home ground here in Zimbabwe. Ideas that were developed here in Zimbabwe. And with mentorship from people like you, Mr. Masuku. So what we're saying is that it is possible to build ideas. It is possible to build, whether it's going to be programs or businesses that are going to go and make an impact globally. So I was really just giving them my own story, but also telling them that if you follow certain steps, you are able to achieve even more than you can imagine. All you want to do is to have detailed planning. Plan to the intrinsic detail, and you're able to see that, if I put all these things on the plan and talk to the right people, there is nothing impossible. And with some of these places that I'm going and some of these universities, I'm only encouraging these youngsters who have such great innovations. And I started my business very young, and I'm still moving with it, and we still have a long way to go, but there's nothing that will stop you if you really want to do it.
Were they not crybabies? What did they actually say they were doing, in response to what you told them? Because in some instances, they will end up, other people will end up asking for money from you, and also not showing any innovation. But we want to hear those bright ideas that the students then, shared with you.
I was fascinated by the level of innovation and ideas that is being built in Zimbabwe. I was so fascinated. All I said to myself is, we think we need to tell more of these stories. So these young people have solutions for most of our problems that we have. What we need to do is to create a circle of communication where some of their ideas can reach the right people in the right spaces so that they can actually start being implemented.
So that they're not discouraged.
Exactly, so that they're not discouraged. And they were asking the right questions to say, okay, if I don't know the right people who can help me, how can I access mentorship? How can I access certain type of resources? Where is it that I can position myself? How can I make sure that my idea is protected so that other people don't take it away from me? We talked about IP, we talked about the business canvas development, all these things that make your idea practical and allow you to build it from scratch.
That's Tafadzwa Chimbetete. He was our guest today, and he was sharing his thoughts about developing African potential so that we are self-reliant, as His Excellency has always said that we should develop that philosophy of being self-reliant. He has given us examples of what he has seen in the world, in particular in the United States, where he's based at the moment, but also traveling to other parts of the world, promoting this idea of working together. If you have any questions to ask about issues we discuss here, including what Jake Chimbetete has been saying, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. If you'd like to engage with people like him and others, again, who come to this program, you can do that on our social media platforms, which again are showing on your screens. If you have missed some of the episodes of Economic Forum, you can actually watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So from our guest, Tafadzwa Chimbetete from Iowa in the United States of America, who has been talking about all things business, and the production team. This is John Masugu wishing you happy viewing.